Hello dearies, welcome to the craft kitchen. I got a request from the lovely Suzanne on how I make my faux leather. So first let me tell you, well, I already told you, I'm not crumpling up the paper before or while I'm treating this, because this is the tool bag of a roofer. This one I got from a neighbor, a retired roofer. So as you can see, this is really thick leather, like this. And if the colored coating on here is wrinkled, but not the leather itself. On this side, well, on the back side where it's hanging from the belt down your leg, there are some really small wrinkles, not some, many, but they don't, absolutely don't look like wrinkled paper. I guess if you crumple up your paper like, I don't know, for 1 hour over and over again, you could achieve something like this, maybe. But then on the other hand, your paper would be really fragile, right? So I took this for an example, and also this one. Yeah, I know, this looks quite different. This is my hip bag. I actually found in a thrift store. Yay! So this is suede or split leather. Oh, it's more split leather. So the lowest part of the leather, and it's really, it's absolutely soft. And like with this one, there are really loads of tiny wrinkles, but they absolutely don't look like wrinkled paper. So I thought, for making faux leather, I want to go with this look, because you're not sort of wearing a book at your body like my neighbor did with this one. So this side won't wrinkle up that much. Well, I know there are some book covers made of suede, and they eventually will look like this, maybe, if they are quite old. And you can hear the roofers outside. Yeah, 9 months, and we still have the construction site. They didn't finish the roof. They left like 2 square meters last week on Wednesday? No, on Tuesday last week, and today it's Tuesday of the next week again. So yeah, I really don't know what they're doing, and my neighbor, yeah, he's sort of embarrassed for them. You know, he was a roofer himself. So yeah, I was looking for this style. So what I did, I used glycerin. Here it is 86%. So yeah, quite intense. And I rubbed it into my paper without crumpling it. Let it dry, and then I put, in fact on this I used, yeah, exactly, 2 layers of acrylic paint. And with the technique I'm going to show you, you will get like these spots here, these light spots, and also some darker spots. And there you have your aged leather. So let's start with preparing the papers. Now I like to use those thick, heavy paper bags. Sorry for the noise. Well, this is teared here and there, but I don't mind. And maybe you could also use just a shopping bag, a paper shopping bag. Well, in Germany they are not made to be that sturdy. In fact, they are not as sturdy as those packaging envelopes. But I'm gonna be trying, for the first time to be honest, to make one of my shopping bags also into faux leather. If it doesn't work, yeah, well, I've used up some glycerin and some acrylic paints, and this perfectly fine paper bag. I don't have another because I don't buy them that often. Yeah, in Germany you have to buy them because I always have at least 2 foldable shopping bags in my purse. So yeah, trying to use this. Well, that's a bit more sturdy. We will see, but first I'm going to be showing you how to do this with these packaging envelopes. Maybe, oh yeah, I really don't want a double layer on here. It is so hot in here, I just can't take this off like I would have heated it before. Wow. You know what? Ugh. I'm going to get some starch and sort of make this unsticky. Yeah, unsticky was a word my brain just made up while thinking German and English at the same time. Non-sticky it is. So here you can see perfectly fine where there's still glue on here. It's quite a bit, right? So just rubbing on some cornstarch. Same I want to do here. So when I roll this up, I'm using the leftover course of packaging paper rolls or gift wrapping paper rolls for this, because I do have those folds in here anyway. Let me show you. Even after I treated them with glycerin, they don't come off. So yeah, these folds are enough, so I don't want to fold my faux leather, I just want to roll it up like gift wrapping. Let me remove the excess a bit. Yeah, perfect. Oh. Yeah, and as you can see, I got out my glass mat again, because for this you want to have a surface easy to clean, or maybe you just do it like I did. I left my protective paper, so a bigger piece of this paper underneath. There were all sorts of alcohol ink, acrylic paints, you name it on there. And the glycerin just soak into this. I'm still waiting for this to dry. I made this yesterday, yeah. So like maybe 20 hours ago. I don't know if it's going if it's going to be dry, because on one side, like I told you, there are acrylic paints, and yeah, basically this is really oily, this glycerin. It is oil, sort of, and I don't know if I can use up my sort of pre-colored paper to make some faux leather. I really want to see what this would look like, you know, some green and white, and I guess there's also red on there, acrylic paint, and then on top layered the brown. Oh, I'm really curious, but it didn't dry yet. Also, if you're doing this glycerin on your paper, when you do have like, I don't know, 26, 27 and more degrees Celsius in your room or outside, it will take forever to dry because it's oil, right? So this has to sort of harden the tiniest bit to actually, yeah, combine with the paper fibers. I managed to get 2 sheets sort of dried, but yeah, for some of them I'm still waiting. So I'm wearing gloves for this because my skin really doesn't like this glycerin, well, like pure glycerin. So I still have some glycerin in here in my bowl, and this is just a t-shirt rack. So I cut apart an old t-shirt of my husband's, and I'm using this to rub in my glycerin here. So I'm just pouring some glycerin into my bowl. I don't need much, really. You could, I've done this myself, you could put in the tiniest amount of water, so the glycerin will soak into your paper faster, because the water in there, in this mixture, yeah, soften the paper, so soak into this. So I'm going to, see, it's really not much, just the tiniest bit at the bottom. And I'm trying not to press too hard, so this is really soaking with glycerin but not dripping. Well, I guess you also could do this with a drippy rag, but no need. So, and now I'm going to rub this glycerin into my paper in a circle motion. And I'm trying to cover all the edges. Also here where it's teared, at this part here, of course, I guess you already can see this. Yeah, you can. Here your faux leather will be thinner, but that doesn't matter. I used a piece on the back cover for the lab book, for the postal lab book, that was here and there a bit thinner, but yeah, not teared, but a bit thinner, but you can't see it now. Of course you want to be very careful when you're using such parts to cover something or to decorate something, because yeah, it's really thin paper and it's going to tear easily, right? So and here you can see this is really fast seeping into the paper. So this surface just looks like almost dry, because there I've been working this in first, and back here it's still very shiny. And also you've seen me holding this with my fingertips. You can see those impressions here on the paper, but you won't see this later when it's dried. Also, you already can see the paper is getting quite thin. Here is the barcode of the back. So the barcode on this side, right? So it's, yeah, actually oily paper. What I'm not going to do now is knead my glycerin into the paper, because there's no need for this. If you want to have like flat leather or a flat leather, faux leather surface, oh my goodness, you don't want to knead this. There are some wrinkles and those lines, of course, and they will show up, but that's absolutely okay with me. Here are some wrinkles. So with the oil, so the glycerin on top, or already soaking into this, you really can see where your wrinkles will be later. But when you cover all this later on with the acrylic paints, you only will see those folds. So I'm going to hang this up and let it dry. Well, it's quite warm, so I'd say at least for 16 hours. There was a spot missing. Well, at least it looked like it. So at least for 16 hours. And now I'm going to do the same for my shopping bag, for my paper shopping bag. When I just hung up the piece I just made, I remembered my son coming home yesterday. He went to the bathroom, came straight back out and asked me, "Mom, could you please use a clothesline just like a normal person, because there was paper everywhere." I am a normal person. My reality is just different from his, right? So of course I'm going to tear this open and trying to make use of as much paper as possible, because yeah, you also could use, oh, this noise, sorry. I'm going to keep those because they are perfect for making like tiny belt strips. So for cleaning you can just use water, but I'm gonna be using dish soap, so watered down dish soap for this, just to make sure there's no oily spots left here. And and my camera just shut down. Well, a few hours ago. I had to let it cool down. Also, my room in here, it's still 25 degrees Celsius. I actually wanted to say, and I happen to have something prepared earlier. So these I made yesterday. This is a piece of really thick packaging paper. This was stuffed into a box with, I guess, PC parts. I don't remember. This is really thick and it turned out quite dark. Then I have this piece of, again, the Amazon packaging I've been using to make a masterboard. So there is some glue on here and also a piece of a book page, but I didn't care, so I just put some glycerine on here. We can use this, but since I had to wait for such a long time, what we made earlier, we prepared earlier, is almost dry now. So I can show you how this looks. So still you can see the folds and where my fingers held the paper, and there are some fuzzles. So I guess I want to let this dry for a bit longer. And this is, yeah, quite soft, whereas the paper bag, this is quite big, is still very stiff. Well, yeah, if you try and roll it, you get those folds. I'm really thinking of coating this a second time thinly, really thinly. So half of what I've been using before the most, so that this paper will be a bit softer in the end. And still, here are some dark spots where the oil didn't dry yet, so the glycerin. And this one I made yesterday. Let me turn this around. Sorry. This still looks, yeah, like I made it today. You can see the dark lines here. But this one I actually coated from both sides to make this really soft. So yeah, we're getting some folds here, but not as harsh as with the paper bag, the shopping bag. Going to let this dry a bit longer. And this is much softer already than this one. It feels actually thinner and a bit more like fabric, whereas this still feels like paper. So I guess I'm going to be waiting a bit longer and then we'll see. So the one I prepared yesterday for today's video, I only I coated on both sides actually. Yeah, you can feel where the glycerin is sitting on top because it's a bit oily, well, more waxy, I'd say. So I'm going to be using this, and also I'm going to try to make some faux leather with this packaging. I don't know if you can see this. This has some lines in here from the pressing of the machine, and these lines actually are what make this paper so strong for packaging paper. Let's see if this will work. So again, I want to put on my gloves because we're going to cover the entire sheet with a mixture of acrylic paints. I hope this is still working. I didn't close it properly. And again, you're also going to need at least one dry rack. I do have 4 or 5 here. So I'm going to be mixing my paints here on this plate. You use glass or some kind of plate, a tile, even a cutting board would do, but you wouldn't want to use your cutting board in the kitchen later. So I'm starting with my brown paint, but I don't want to have this sienna, this umber color here. As you can see, this is quite some reddish brown, and there's a bit that dried on me because I didn't close my paint bottles properly the last time. So let me get this out of the way. I also do have a wet rag here because now and then I want to even clean my my gloves. The wet rag in combination with your acrylic paint, you can get this clean afterwards because it doesn't dry that fast, but with this, and you totally will need a dry rag to bring on the color, the paint onto your paper. So mixing in just a bit of black to make this a bit darker. And because, let me show you, where is my bigger palette knife? Because this is going to be sort of a more or less grayish brown color. I'm going to mix in some blue to make it even more grayish, but at the same time more, like what's the color? You know, the one I've been using for this. I forgot. So I'm going to mix in this, actually it's petrol, it's not really blue anymore, it's more of a dark bluish green. Just 1 or 2 drops will do. Come on. Why won't you close? So just mixing this in to make my color a bit more grayish, so even more grayish. Just because I like this color. Of course, you can use any mix you like. I mean, there's this even colored or dyed leather, which will be red in the end. So yeah, why not? Let's see. Ah, yeah, I think I like this. Well, I will have to work here on the right hand. So I'm going to put this here. So, and now I'm using my dry, this is important, my dry rag, to get some paint on here. Just sort of dabbing this in, like so. And then let me move this. These shadows are making me nervous. And then I'm just, yeah, sort of polishing this on to my glycerine soaked paper. Not too thick, because we want to put on more than one layer here. So when you polish this onto your paper and the paint is still like shiny but not looking wet anymore, you will have the right amount of paint on here. And yeah, again, I didn't make enough of my paint, so I'm just going to wet what I have left here on my rag with a bit of water and try to bring on what's left here in my rag. The reason I'm using these circular motions to bring this on is I don't want this coating, this first coating, most of the time not even the second coating, to be too regular. So you sort of get an aged look. So if there are, after you've coated this the first time, some spots left where you can see through the paper, like here or here at the edge, don't worry. When this is dry in about, yeah, usually 10 minutes, at the moment let's say 2 minutes, and you go over with another color or another coating, you even could use the same color mix, you won't see this anymore. Going to let this dry, and then I want to try and make this. Usually I would use shoe polish on these kind of papers, so the really strong papers, but I don't know, for some reason I can't get this at the moment. I can get clear and black, but not brown. Well, I can get brown in a more liquid form, but that doesn't help me. So let's see if this still works here. Again, mixing my colors, and I guess, well, the background is quite dark already, so why not just use this umber like it is. Again, why did my paint dry inside of the bottle? Blech. I really have to get a new bottle. What was I saying? Oh yeah, since this already is quite dark, let's just try and just polish this with one coating of the brown, the umber, and let's see how this will turn out. I already can say this is quite reddish or orangey, but maybe I'm going to like it. In the end, this light brown, this reddish brown coating is just my first layer anyway, so I could cover this, of course. So, and since I prepared this really big sheet yesterday anyway, and I still do have some paint on here, I could cover with what's it called? Clear, not clear, oh, clear film, I guess. You know, this sort you're using in the kitchen to cover your food with. Yeah, just cover my plate with the clear film. Maybe spray some water on top of the paint beforehand, and then I could let this sit there. But yeah, I also can use up my paint here on half of my sheet, because I want to show you how this turns out if it isn't sort of clear, not clear, dry enough. Well, our first piece is already dry, and as you can see it's still a bit wrinkly, and that's because this was sort of wrinkled up anyway in the first place, so even before I prepared it with glycerin, like here. And yeah, I'd say you could leave it like it is, maybe just cover a bit of those light spots here, because this already looks like old leather. But I want to add a second coat of my acrylic paint here with a slightly different shade of brown, so I will get a bit more depth and yeah, actually more life into this piece. So again, mixing my acrylic paints, and what I do now is just the same what I did before. I just use my paint to, yes, sort of rub or polish this into my paper. So I will have just a thin coat on here, and this way we will have lighter and darker shadows in the end. And yeah, because paper has a memory, I can't do much about the wrinkles in here. Even if I had ironed it, there would be still some wrinkles, but I just embrace them, because still they don't look like just crumpled paper. So I guess you already can see this. This is still a bit shiny, so sorry. We already do have different shades of brown on here, although this is not dry yet. So I'm going to let this dry, and I just teared my paper, I guess. Well, that's all right. And I think this turns out quite nicely. It's almost dry already. Now, and I also used just my brown paint here on this piece, which is the former thick packaging paper, not anymore for thick. And this, yeah, looks a bit more rough at the moment. I'd say, yeah, this look will stay like this. And this was actually what I wanted to show you with, hold the line, with this piece, because here you can see this actually looks like suede leather. Yeah. And that is what happens if your glycerin treated paper isn't really dry, so still a bit sort of oily, because you are going to rub off the top fibers or break up the top fibers. This is actually what you do when you peel off the skin for making leather. And yeah, it really looks nice, and I don't know if I'm going to add some more here yet. Here, definitely, but only because I don't like the color. The background was darker than with the other piece. I just used my brown, which is sort of burnt umber. No, not burnt umber, umber. And I guess I want to add a more dark layer here on top. So let's do this. For this, I just can use my rag again, because the color will be quite similar. And I'm trying to polish this in as thin as possible. So I will have the first reddish coat of acrylic paint show through here. So I've been working on this piece for about 10 minutes now, and while I was sort of polishing my faux leather, some thoughts came to my mind. So first of all, like I told you, about 10 minutes now, because I don't want any of those white spots, like this one, to be seen. But it's really important that when you add your acrylic paint, you not just only polish this in this circular sort of movement, but also try to blend the edges so that you don't get any harsh lines. I am used to this, and sorry, dearies, I absolutely forgot to tell you. Yeah, this happens if you are used to something and try to explain it to others. Well, I very often hear people say and demonstrate, just look how easy this is. And from my experience, it didn't take me long to practice to do this, because it doesn't matter how easy to use a medium is, you just will have to practice. If your first take on this is like perfect, kudos to you. My first 2 or 3 haven't been like perfect. Well, they were quite nice, and they actually looked like leather, but I had some harsh edges here and there, and also I didn't take that much care of covering the white spots. There is another one. So yeah, it took me a while to practice with this medium. It doesn't matter if it's acrylic paint for these sort of things. If you want to make backgrounds with watercolors, if you are making just backgrounds with distress oxides, or even if you're just trying to get a perfect crisp image while stamping, you have to practice. So if your first try doesn't work out for you, just go on practice. And the good thing about using so little, the bonus of using so little paint for this is you can go over and over it again and again and again. Well, at some point, like at 10 layers, it will break, obviously, but you have the opportunity to just add paint. And if you're unsure, then just turn it over and use the back side for practice, and then turn it back over again to the side you really want to use as your cover piece. And when feeling comfortable with your technique, just add more paint to this and you will get a nice result. As you can see, working on this a bit longer, just turned out beautiful. I really love it. And yeah, most of the time, of course, if you're working like this, every time, every piece will look differently and will be a surprise in the end, sort of. You can define the colors, of course, but you'll never know 100% what it will be look in the like in the end, because like you can see here is a bit more paint on, and this looks more used or like shadowy, well, more used. So yeah, just go with it and be surprised. So what to do with you? I am thinking, yeah, I'm going to turn my Suede test piece into 2 pieces. For this I will have to find my scissors. I'll be back, I promise. I'm just over here cutting my paper. So, cut the painted piece off. Well, you know what? I'm not going to cut this in half. I will leave it like it is, just to show you, like sort of in the middle, how this will turn out. So, yeah, like for sort of in the middle, this isn't enough paint. Let's see how far we get here. Maybe on this side, yeah. So I'm using my leftover paint with the same technique I've been using before on this, yeah, sort of rough paper. Yeah, a bit rough. And I'm just polishing in this leftover paint until I don't have any more. See here, this is what I mean with blending. So this edge looks a bit fringed, and while it is still damp, I just can move it and won't have like a brush stroke sort of look in the end, right? We do have this part of our Suede left, so I'm going to use the middle and the left side, so 2 parts of this piece, to show you a quite similar but different technique. Again, I'm just using the brown paint like I did for my background, and again there's something stuck in there. Aha! There you are. Now I have to find what's been clogging up here. My bottle. Well, got it. And since this is much too much, I will have to find a way to sort of divide the amount of paint I do have here on my plate, because I only want to have sort of a thinner layer, let's say. So not like a paint puddle, just covering my plate. So now I'm gonna be using a fresh rag, again a t-shirt rag, and I'm going to, yeah, really crumple this up, so I will have something like this, but it shouldn't be too loose. And then I'm just going to carefully dab this into here, and now I'm using my rag just sort of stamp on my paper like so, again using the same color like I did before. And now I'm just using a piece of this plastic packaging, so it's really thin, and I just crumple this, sorry for the noise, with my hand. You also could use aluminum foil aluminium foil, like we like to say for this. And yeah, dab again my foil in here and dab this on my paper. But actually I don't like this technique very much, not because it's so uncontrollable, but more because the actual paint on your piece will be a bit more raised, because of course there's no seepage seeping into this paper or foil, and it will give off any color, whereas when you use the the fabric rack for this, you will have a more or less dry surface, no, damp, not wet with paint, but damp, yeah. And this way you will have the paint more flat on your surface. And now for the fourth or third, I don't know, last technique, I'm going to be using this brush. This is dry. I don't have a round brush at the moment with stiff bristles. I would rather use a round brush for this. The only one I have at the moment is my glue brush. I don't want to use my glue brush for this because I don't want to have any pigments left on my brush, on my glue brush by any chance. So I'm just using this dry brush, getting a bit more, trying to spread this out here a bit. I had to spray some water on this because it started to dry on me already. So like this, maybe. That'll do. For this I'm going to be using this rag here again. You could also use maybe a kitchen towel. This would do, and I'm just dabbing in my brush, wipe it, and then I just dab my brush here on my paper. So I will have these tiny spots here. So let's have a look what we made, and also let's compare them with the original leather pouches. So yeah, first these are the handles I cut off from the shopping bag. I just used what was left on the lid of my paint bottle with my gloves and just rubbed it in so that I got this distressed look here. So almost like Suede on both of them. I really massaged this leftover paint in quite harshly. It's not quite dry yet, and no worries, I didn't discard the color or the paint I had on my plate. I just filled it into this bottle, this glue bottle, filled the paint up with a bit of distilled water so it won't go stale in a few days. And now I'm going to use this to either paint on my papers to color them, or I'm going to fill a bit of this in a spray bottle. I don't want to keep this in a spray bottle because the nozzle definitely will get clogged. So I'm keeping this heavily watered down acrylic paint in a glue bottle. Yeah, so much for waste not, want not. First thing we made was this sheet, already wrinkled. For this we've been using two more darker colors. So with my studio lights shining on them, they look quite, yeah, really shiny, but believe me, the surface is really more like this leather, and yeah, this also looks shiny, see? And you do have these lighter and darker spots, which makes them, which makes this sheet look quite old. I like it. I really like it. And yeah, although I've been using this, so most of this piece before, for making a masterboard and already had some glue here on the backside, this turned out quite soft, I'd say. And then this is the really thick packaging paper, still oily, but with bookbinding glue this will stick to paper. I won't have a problem with this, but I will have to, I want to let this dry a bit longer. And because of the not sort of polished surface, so this surface has been rough from the beginning, this turned out a bit more rough under the paint also, but I like it. So this looks more like the inside of this leather, so not as rough as Suede, but yeah, still a bit rough. And also two different colors, a lighter for the first coating, a darker one for the second coating. And I really like that this is quite spotty. I love it. And then, yeah, sort of the experimental sheet. This wasn't dry when I started coating this with the first layer of acrylic paint. So just like this, it turned a bit rough. And on this side, now it looks like the other piece I just showed you, a bit rough here on the top. So the really light reddish brown color in the background all over the sheet. And for this I've been using a bit darker tone. And here I bumped in with, I don't know what, you can see, of course the paper is tearing. You can prevent these things, not completely, but a bit, if you put on some acrylic varnish, for example, or maybe gel medium, matte or glossy, your choice. You also could wax this, but since we've been using acrylic paints, the wax on top would take forever to dry. So maybe not the best idea, but it would work. It would dry at some point. And again, this looks like really roughened up used leather, so heavy leather. And then we do have here the wrinkly look, which I personally wouldn't call this a leather look, but it's still nice. So you can't see much of a difference here for this strip here. So let's say about 15 centimeters in width. I've been using my t-shirt rag and dabbed on the same paint I've been using to paint the background. So as you can see, this is much darker here and more prominent. And then here for this about 10 centimeters, I've been using this plastic packaging, and this is even more prominent and also a bit more raised, because you can't control the amount of paint that well on here. Well, here it's also a bit thicker, but I think this is much easier to handle than with the crumpled up plastic. And here on this, still the coating, the first coating underneath this dark shade here, which turned out a bit like, can you see this in here? No, this is coated. Well, yeah, a bit like the inside of Suede, so like fluffy, I'd say, I don't know. And then I've been using a dry brush and just dabbed this on with the same color I've been using to back this. And to me, this really looks more like aged leather than this. This is still a nice look, but to me this doesn't look like leather. So actually I prefer using this method. You get this also on completely dried glycerine paper. You don't have to use sort of still damp paper, I'd say, so still oily feeling paper. You can also do this with absolutely dry glycerine paper. And for, yeah, this sort of leather, this heavy leather, I prefer actually this flat look, or yeah, sometimes also this sort of crumpled, but this really looks like the leather has been crumpled up the tiniest bit. So this hasn't been treated as roughly, like you, don't know, painted on your glycerine and then just kneaded your paper. No, this was a bit wrinkly from the beginning. You can just sort of form these wrinkles carefully, then put on your glycerine, let it dry, and then coat it with acrylic paint, and you will get this look. And if you want to have it completely flat, just make it like this. So dearies, I hope I could give you sort of an idea how to do this. Like I told you, you might want to practice this a bit. And again, thanks Suzanne for the inspiration for this video. Sometimes I just do things here on camera because they are like everyday stuff to me, and I forget that I forgot to tell you how to do this. So if you want to know how I do different sort of things, just feel free to ask, and I'm gonna be trying my best to explain how to do this. Dearies, have a wonderful rest of the week. Try and stay cool if you also do have this unbearable heat, and as always, stay creative and be excellent to each other. Bye!